Question 1. The evaluation methodology shows a candidate's application for the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute's entrance examination includes a detailed project proposal. The admissions committee is tasked with assessing this proposal, but there is a divergence of opinion among members regarding its overall merit, with some members focusing on the perceived innovation of the idea and others on the candidate's prior academic performance. Which approach best aligns with the established regulatory framework for fair and objective admissions at the Institute? Option A. The committee should focus on the candidate's reputation and any informal recommendations received from external sources, as these can provide valuable insights into their character and suitability beyond formal academic metrics. Option B. The committee should allow individual members to independently assess the proposal based on their personal judgment of the candidate's overall potential and enthusiasm, with the final decision being a consensus reached through informal discussion. Option C. The committee should prioritize a thorough assessment of the project proposal's technical feasibility and its alignment with the core curriculum of the chosen program, using a predefined scoring rubric that evaluates specific engineering and economic principles demonstrated in the proposal. Option D. The committee should give significant weight to the perceived creativity and novelty of the project idea, as this indicates a candidate's potential for future groundbreaking work, even if the technical details are not fully elaborated. Correct answer is C. The committee should prioritize a thorough assessment of the project proposal's technical feasibility and its alignment with the core curriculum of the chosen program, using a predefined scoring rubric that evaluates specific engineering and economic principles demonstrated in the proposal. Explanation. The evaluation methodology shows a critical juncture in the admissions process where subjective interpretation could lead to biased outcomes, directly impacting the fairness and integrity of the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute's entrance examinations. The challenge lies in balancing the need for comprehensive candidate assessment with the imperative to adhere strictly to established, transparent, and equitable evaluation criteria. Professionals must navigate this by ensuring that all assessment methods are demonstrably linked to the stated objectives of the exam and are applied consistently across all applicants, preventing any perception of favoritism or discrimination. The correct approach involves a systematic review of the candidate's submitted portfolio against a predefined rubric that assesses specific engineering and economic competencies relevant to the Institute's programs. This rubric, developed and approved by the admissions committee, ensures that evaluation is objective, measurable, and directly tied to the academic and professional aptitudes the Institute seeks. Adherence to this rubric is paramount, as it aligns with the principles of fair assessment and the regulatory framework governing educational admissions, which mandates transparency and equal opportunity. This method minimizes subjective bias and provides a defensible basis for admission decisions. An incorrect approach would be to rely on the personal impressions or anecdotal evidence of the admissions committee members regarding the candidate's perceived potential or fit for the Institute, without direct correlation to the established evaluation criteria. This introduces significant subjectivity and opens the door to unconscious bias, violating the principle of equitable assessment. Another incorrect approach is to prioritize extracurricular achievements that are not directly relevant to the core engineering or economic disciplines, or to give undue weight to factors outside the scope of the official admissions criteria, such as personal connections or perceived social standing. These actions deviate from the established evaluation framework and undermine the meritocratic basis of the admissions process, potentially leading to regulatory noncompliance and ethical breaches. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough understanding of the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute's official admissions policy and evaluation guidelines. This involves clearly identifying the objective criteria and the weighting assigned to each component of the application. When faced with ambiguity or the potential for subjective interpretation, the professional should refer back to these established guidelines and, if necessary, consult with the admissions committee or designated review board to ensure consistent and fair application of the rules. The process should always prioritize evidence-based assessment aligned with the stated goals of the examination, ensuring that all decisions are transparent, justifiable, and ethically sound. Question 2. Analysis of the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute's policy on academic integrity in the context of emerging artificial intelligence, AI tools, which approach best balances the need to prevent plagiarism with the imperative to prepare students for a technologically evolving professional world. Option A. Focus solely on implementing advanced plagiarism detection software that flags AI-generated content without providing any specific guidance or educational support to students. Option B. Prohibit the use of all AI-powered tools for any aspect of coursework, with strict penalties for any detected usage. Option C. Develop clear guidelines defining acceptable and unacceptable uses of AI in academic work, coupled with educational initiatives to teach students ethical AI integration and critical evaluation of AI-generated content. Option D. Ignore the presence of AI tools, assuming students will use them responsibly or irresponsibly without institutional intervention. The correct answer is C. Develop clear guidelines defining acceptable and unacceptable uses of AI in academic work, coupled with educational initiatives to teach students ethical AI integration and critical evaluation of AI-generated content. Explanation. The scenario presents a challenge in balancing academic integrity with the practicalities of student support, specifically concerning the use of AI tools for assignments. The core professional challenge lies in upholding the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute's academic honesty policies, while also recognizing the evolving landscape of educational technology and the need to prepare students for future professional environments where such tools are prevalent. Careful judgment is required to distinguish between legitimate assistance and academic misconduct. The correct approach involves a proactive and educational strategy. This means clearly communicating the Institute's policy on AI usage, defining what constitutes acceptable and unacceptable use, and providing students with guidance on how to leverage AI tools ethically and effectively as aids for learning and research, rather than as substitutes for original work. This approach aligns with the Institute's commitment to fostering genuine understanding and critical thinking, as mandated by its academic regulation, which implicitly or explicitly requires students to demonstrate their own knowledge and skills. It also prepares students for professional contexts where responsible AI integration is becoming a standard expectation. An incorrect approach would be to ignore the use of AI tools altogether. This failure stems from a lack of engagement with current technological trends and a potential disregard for the Institute's responsibility to equip students with relevant skills. It risks creating an environment where academic dishonesty can proliferate unchecked, undermining the value of the degrees awarded. Another incorrect approach is to implement a blanket ban on all AI tools without clear definitions or educational support. This approach is overly restrictive and fails to acknowledge the potential benefits of AI as a learning aid. It can lead to student frustration and a perception that the Institute is out of touch with modern educational practices. Ethically, it may also be seen as an unreasonable impediment to learning, especially if AI tools are widely used in the student's future professions. A third incorrect approach is to focus solely on punitive measures without any educational component. While consequences for academic misconduct are necessary, an overemphasis on punishment without guidance can create a climate of fear rather than fostering a culture of academic integrity. It fails to address the root causes of potential misuse and does not help students understand the nuances of ethical AI use. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a multifaceted approach. First, thoroughly understanding the relevant academic policies and ethical guidelines of the institution. Second, assessing the current technological landscape and its implications for education. Third, engaging in open communication with students and faculty to establish clear expectations and provide necessary guidance. And finally, developing a balanced strategy that upholds academic integrity while embracing responsible innovation. Question 3. Benchmark analysis indicates that the admissions committee at the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute is reviewing an application from a highly promising candidate whose academic record, while strong, falls slightly short of a specific quantitative threshold for one of the required subjects. The committee member responsible for this application is aware of the candidate's exceptional extracurricular achievements and potential for future success, which are not explicitly weighted in the current admission criteria. What is the most appropriate course of action for this committee member, strictly adhering to the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute's regulatory framework for admissions? Option A. Inform the candidate that they do not meet the minimum requirements and advise them to reapply in a future cycle without further consideration of their application. Option B. Initiate a formal discussion with the admissions committee to present the candidate's full profile, including extracurricular achievements, and explore whether the committee, based on documented exceptional circumstances and within the spirit of the Institute's regulations, can approve a conditional or exceptional admission. Option C. Recommend the candidate for admission based solely on their extracurricular achievements, assuming these implicitly compensate for the academic shortfall, without formal committee discussion or documentation. Option D. Discreetly adjust the candidate's academic scores in the application to meet the required threshold before presenting it to the committee for approval. The correct answer is B. Initiate a formal discussion with the admissions committee to present the candidate's full profile, including extracurricular achievements, and explore whether the committee, based on documented exceptional circumstances and within the spirit of the Institute's regulations, can approve a conditional or exceptional admission. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the Institute's academic integrity policies and the pressure to admit a promising candidate who may not fully meet all stipulated entry criteria. The admissions committee must balance the desire to foster talent with the obligation to uphold the established standards that ensure the quality and credibility of the Institute's programs. Careful judgment is required to avoid compromising the integrity of the admissions process, while still exploring legitimate avenues for exceptional candidates. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the candidate's application against the established criteria, followed by a documented discussion with the admissions committee to explore any potential mitigating factors or alternative pathways that align with the Institute's regulations. This approach is correct because it adheres to the principles of fairness, transparency, and due process enshrined in academic regulations. Specifically, it respects the defined admission requirements while allowing for a structured and documented consideration of exceptional circumstances, ensuring that any deviation is justified and approved through the proper channels, thereby maintaining academic standards and institutional reputation. An incorrect approach would be to bypass the formal review process and unilaterally recommend admission based on informal discussions or personal recommendations. This fails to uphold the regulatory framework by circumventing established procedures and potentially creating an unfair advantage for one candidate over others who have met all requirements. It also risks undermining the authority of the admissions committee and the credibility of the Institute's selection process. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the candidate's application altogether due to minor discrepancies, without exploring any potential for exceptions or further information. This approach is ethically questionable, as it may lead to the exclusion of a potentially valuable student, and fails to demonstrate a commitment to a holistic review process that the Institute's guidelines may implicitly or explicitly support for exceptional cases. It prioritizes rigid adherence over a nuanced assessment of potential. A third incorrect approach would be to fabricate or misrepresent information in the candidate's application to meet the entry requirements. This is a severe ethical and regulatory violation, constituting academic misconduct and fraud. It directly undermines the integrity of the admissions process and the Institute's commitment to honesty and transparency. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Understanding and strictly adhering to the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute's admission regulations and policies. 2. Conducting a comprehensive and objective review of all applications against the stated criteria. 3. Documenting all deliberations and decisions meticulously. 4. Seeking clarification from relevant academic or administrative bodies if ambiguities arise in the regulations. 5. Engaging in collaborative decision-making with the admissions committee, ensuring all perspectives are considered and justified within the regulatory framework. 6. Prioritizing fairness, transparency, and the long-term academic integrity of the institution. Question 4. Compliance review shows that a senior official's relative is applying for admission to the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute. The official has contacted the head of the admissions committee, requesting that the entrance examination questions be shared in advance with their relative to ensure a fair chance of success. The head of the admissions committee is aware of the Institute's strict examination security protocols and the principle of equal opportunity for all applicants. What is the most appropriate course of action for the head of the admissions committee? Option A. Forward the request to the examination committee members individually, asking for their informal opinion on whether a slight adjustment could be made. Option B. Politely but firmly decline the request, citing the Institute's strict examination security protocols and commitment to fair and equitable assessment for all applicants, and report the incident to the relevant internal oversight body. Option C. Inform the senior official that, while direct sharing of questions is not possible, they can arrange for a private tutoring session for the relative with a faculty member specializing in the exam subjects. Option D. Agree to share a limited number of general topics that might be covered in the exam, without revealing specific questions, to help the relative prepare. Correct answer is B. Politely but firmly decline the request, citing the Institute's strict examination security protocols and commitment to fair and equitable assessment for all applicants, and report the incident to the relevant internal oversight body. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the Institute's academic mission and the potential for external influence to compromise its integrity. The entrance exam is a critical gatekeeping mechanism, and any deviation from established procedures can undermine public trust and the fairness of the selection process. Careful judgment is required to uphold the principles of academic integrity and equitable opportunity for all applicants. The correct approach involves strictly adhering to the established examination protocols as outlined by the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute's regulatory framework. This means ensuring that all examination materials are secured, administered under controlled conditions, and evaluated impartially based on predefined criteria. This approach is justified by the Institute's internal regulations and the broader ethical principles of fair assessment, which mandate transparency, objectivity, and the prevention of any form of undue influence or advantage. Upholding these standards is paramount to maintaining the credibility of the Institute and its graduates. An incorrect approach would be to accede to the request for preferential treatment. This action would represent a direct violation of the Institute's examination regulations, which are designed to ensure a level playing field for all candidates. Ethically, it constitutes a breach of fairness and integrity, as it grants an unfair advantage to one applicant over others. Furthermore, it could lead to the admission of unqualified candidates, potentially impacting the academic standards of the Institute. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the request without taking any action. This passive stance fails to address the potential ethical breach and leaves the door open for future similar requests or the perception of impropriety. It neglects the professional responsibility to uphold the integrity of the examination process and could be interpreted as tacit approval of such requests. A third incorrect approach would be to attempt to subtly alter the examination content or scoring to accommodate the request without explicit authorization. This is a form of academic dishonesty and a violation of the Institute's procedural guidelines. It undermines the validity of the examination and erodes the trust placed in the examination administrators. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a clear understanding of the Institute's governing regulations and ethical codes. When faced with a request that appears to compromise these standards, a professional should 1. Identify the potential conflict with established rules and ethical principles. 2. Consult the relevant internal policies and guidelines. 3. Report the situation to the appropriate authority within the Institute, e.g., the Examination Board, Academic Affairs Office, for guidance and decision-making. 4. Maintain strict confidentiality and avoid any action that could be construed as complicity or bias. The ultimate goal is to ensure the integrity and fairness of the examination process. Question 5. Research into the proper attribution of sources for a final-year engineering project at the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute has revealed a student's extensive use of published research papers. The student has paraphrased most of the content, but has omitted explicit citations for several key ideas and data points, believing that paraphrasing alone is sufficient to avoid academic misconduct. Which of the following represents the most appropriate course of action for the project supervisor, adhering strictly to the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute's academic integrity regulations? Option A. Accept the project as is, assuming the student's intent was not malicious and that paraphrasing demonstrates sufficient understanding and originality. Option B. Suggest the student remove the paraphrase sections entirely and rely only on their own original thoughts and findings, even if it significantly reduces the project's scope and depth. Option C. Advise the student to immediately revise the project to include comprehensive and accurate citations for all paraphrased content and data, explaining the Institute's specific policy on plagiarism and the importance of intellectual honesty. Option D. Report the student to the Institute's disciplinary committee for plagiarism without further discussion, as the omission of citations is a clear violation. The correct answer is C. Advise the student to immediately revise the project to include comprehensive and accurate citations for all paraphrased content and data, explaining the Institute's specific policy on plagiarism and the importance of intellectual honesty. Explanation. The scenario presents a challenge related to academic integrity and the proper use of research materials within the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute's framework. The core difficulty lies in balancing the need for students to access and utilize existing knowledge with the imperative to produce original work and avoid plagiarism, as stipulated by the Institute's academic regulations. This requires careful judgment to distinguish between legitimate referencing and academic misconduct. The correct approach involves a thorough understanding and application of the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute's guidelines on academic honesty and citation. This approach prioritizes the ethical use of sources by ensuring that all borrowed ideas, data, or text are properly attributed to their original authors. This upholds the Institute's commitment to academic integrity, fosters a culture of original thought, and ensures that students develop sound research skills. Specifically, it aligns with the Institute's likely regulations against plagiarism, which demand clear and accurate acknowledgement of all external contributions. An incorrect approach that involves submitting work with uncited or improperly cited material fails to meet the Institute's academic standards. This constitutes plagiarism, a serious ethical and regulatory violation. It undermines the learning process by misrepresenting the student's own contribution and disrespecting the intellectual property of others. Another incorrect approach, such as fabricating data or sources, is also a severe breach of academic integrity, directly contravening the principles of honest scholarship and research that the Institute is bound to uphold. A third incorrect approach, which might involve relying solely on paraphrased content without understanding or synthesizing the information, demonstrates a lack of critical engagement with the material and a failure to develop original analytical skills, which are key objectives of the Institute's curriculum. Professionals in academic settings should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a clear understanding of the relevant institutional policies and ethical codes. When faced with a situation involving the use of external research, the first step is to consult the specific guidelines on academic integrity and citation provided by the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute. This involves identifying what constitutes acceptable use of sources, the required citation formats, and the penalties for academic misconduct. Subsequently, one must critically evaluate the work in question against these standards, ensuring that all borrowed material is appropriately acknowledged and that the student's own contribution is clearly discernible. If any doubt exists, seeking clarification from academic advisors or relevant faculty is a crucial step in ensuring compliance and maintaining ethical standards. Question 6. System analysis indicates a potential request from a prominent local official to review specific question topics for the upcoming Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute entrance exam, citing a desire to ensure relevant and practical questions. The Institute's examination regulations stipulate a strict protocol for question development and review, emphasizing objectivity and preventing any form of pre-disclosure or undue influence. How should the examination committee respond to this request to maintain the integrity of the entrance process? Option A. Politely decline the request, explaining that the examination development process is confidential and governed by strict internal regulations to ensure fairness and prevent any compromise to the integrity of the entrance exam. Option B. Forward the request to the official's office with a note indicating that the examination committee will consider their suggestions if they align with the Institute's established curriculum and examination standards. Option C. Agree to provide a general overview of the subject areas to be covered without revealing specific questions to accommodate the official's interest. Option D. Schedule a meeting with the official to discuss the specific types of questions that might be included, aiming to find a balance between the official's suggestions and the Institute's examination guidelines. The correct answer is A. Politely decline the request, explaining that the examination development process is confidential and governed by strict internal regulations to ensure fairness and prevent any compromise to the integrity of the entrance exam. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the institute's academic integrity policies and the potential for external influence on the entrance examination process. The examination is a critical gatekeeping mechanism, and any compromise to its fairness and objectivity could undermine the credibility of the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute. Careful judgment is required to uphold the principles of meritocracy and equal opportunity for all applicants. The correct approach involves a rigorous, independent review of the examination materials and procedures, strictly adhering to the established guidelines of the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute entrance exam. This approach prioritizes the integrity of the examination process by ensuring that all questions are developed and vetted according to the institute's official regulations, free from any undue influence or bias. This aligns with the ethical obligation to maintain a fair and transparent selection process, as mandated by the Institute's commitment to academic excellence and equitable admission. An incorrect approach would be to accede to the request for specific question content without a formal, documented process. This action directly violates the Institute's regulations concerning examination security and fairness. It introduces a significant ethical failure by creating an unfair advantage for a specific applicant or group, thereby compromising the principle of equal opportunity. Such a deviation from established procedures erodes trust in the examination system and could lead to accusations of favoritism or corruption. Another incorrect approach would be to dismiss the request outright without any internal review or communication. While seemingly protective of integrity, this lacks the professional diligence required to address potential concerns or to document the rationale for upholding the established procedures. It fails to engage with the request in a structured manner, potentially leaving room for misinterpretation or future challenges to the examination's fairness. A professional response requires a clear, documented process for handling such inquiries, even if the outcome is to maintain the status quo. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve 1. Identifying the core ethical and regulatory principles at stake, e.g., fairness, transparency, academic integrity. 2. Consulting the relevant internal policies and guidelines, in this case, the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute entrance exam regulations. 3. Documenting all communications and decisions. 4. Seeking guidance from appropriate internal authorities if the situation is ambiguous or presents a significant ethical dilemma. 5. Implementing a solution that demonstrably upholds the established standards and protects the integrity of the process. Question 7. Comparative studies suggest that the integrity of university entrance examinations is paramount for maintaining public trust and ensuring equitable access to higher education. In the context of the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute's entrance examination, imagine a scenario where a senior official from a government ministry, who is also a parent of a prospective candidate, approaches an examination committee member. The official expresses concern about the perceived difficulty of a particular subject area in the upcoming exam and subtly suggests that adjustments could be made to ensure a fairer outcome for all candidates. What is the most ethically and procedurally sound course of action for the examination committee member? Option A. Politely decline the suggestion, reaffirming commitment to the established examination protocols and the Institute's regulations for fair and impartial assessment, and report the interaction to the examination board. Option B. Consider the official's suggestion and discreetly discuss with other committee members how minor adjustments could be made to the exam's difficulty in the mentioned subject area to align with the official's concerns. Option C. Inform the official that, while direct adjustments are not possible, the committee can provide general guidance on the expected scope of the exam to help candidates prepare more effectively. Option D. Agree to the official's request, assuring them that the exam will be adjusted to ensure their child has a favorable chance of admission, and then proceed with making the suggested modifications. The correct answer is A. Politely decline the suggestion, reaffirming commitment to the established examination protocols and the Institute's regulations for fair and impartial assessment, and report the interaction to the examination board. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the Institute's academic mission and the potential for external influence to compromise its integrity. The entrance exam is a critical gatekeeping mechanism, and any deviation from established procedures can undermine public trust and the fairness of the selection process. Careful judgment is required to uphold the principles of transparency, meritocracy, and adherence to the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute's own examination regulations. The correct approach involves a rigorous and impartial application of the established examination protocols. This means ensuring that all candidates are assessed solely on their academic merit, as determined by the official examination content and marking schemes, without any external interference or preferential treatment. This aligns with the fundamental ethical principles of fairness and equity in education, and implicitly with any regulatory framework that mandates standardized and objective assessment for institutional admissions. The Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute's own internal regulations, which would govern its entrance examinations, would undoubtedly prioritize these principles. An incorrect approach that involves accepting or acting upon unsolicited advice regarding specific exam content or candidate selection criteria would represent a serious breach of academic integrity. This would not only violate the spirit of a merit-based examination, but also potentially contravene the Institute's own internal regulations designed to prevent bias and ensure a level playing field. Such actions could be construed as an attempt to manipulate the outcome, thereby compromising the validity of the entire examination process. Another incorrect approach, such as selectively sharing information about the exam's difficulty or format with certain individuals or groups, would also be a violation. This creates an unfair advantage for those who receive the information, undermining the principle of equal opportunity for all applicants. This action directly contradicts the requirement for a transparent and standardized examination process. The professional decision-making process in such situation should involve a clear understanding of the Institute's examination regulations and ethical guidelines. Professionals should prioritize adherence to these established procedures above all else. If faced with external pressure or suggestions that deviate from these norms, the appropriate response is to politely but firmly decline, citing the Institute's commitment to fair and impartial assessment. Escalating concerns to a designated supervisor or ethics committee within the Institute is also a crucial step if the pressure persists or if there is a perceived risk of misconduct. The ultimate goal is to safeguard the integrity of the examination process and uphold the reputation of the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute. Question 8. System analysis indicates that the admissions committee for the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute is reviewing applications for the upcoming academic year. A candidate who is otherwise exceptionally strong in terms of academic performance and extracurricular achievements has submitted an application with a minor discrepancy in their high school transcript. A single course grade is missing. The committee is under pressure to meet enrollment targets. Which of the following actions best upholds the integrity of the admission process according to the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute's regulatory framework? Option A. Admit the candidate based on their overall strong profile, assuming the missing grade is not critical and can be rectified later. Option B. Request the applicant to immediately provide the missing transcript information to complete their application before further consideration. Option C. Forward the application for review with a note to the admissions board about the missing information, allowing them to decide. Option D. Accept the application as is, prioritizing the candidate's strong overall profile over the minor documentation issue. The correct answer is B. Request the applicant to immediately provide the missing transcript information to complete their application before further consideration. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the desire to attract talented students and the imperative to adhere strictly to the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute's admission regulations. The pressure to meet enrollment targets can create an environment where shortcuts or misinterpretations of rules might seem appealing, but such actions carry significant ethical and regulatory risks. Maintaining the integrity of the admission process is paramount to the Institute's reputation and the fairness of opportunity for all applicants. The correct approach involves a thorough and objective evaluation of all submitted documents against the established admission criteria, as outlined in the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute's official admission guidelines. This means verifying the authenticity and completeness of each required document, such as academic transcripts, identification, and any specific program prerequisites. Adherence to these guidelines ensures a transparent and equitable selection process, preventing any perception of favoritism or bias. This aligns with the Institute's commitment to academic merit and fair competition, upholding the trust placed in its admissions committee. An incorrect approach would be to overlook minor discrepancies in documentation, such as a slightly incomplete academic record or a document that is not perfectly formatted, with the justification that the applicant is otherwise highly qualified. This fails to uphold the regulatory framework of the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute, which mandates strict adherence to documentation requirements for all applicants. Such leniency can set a dangerous precedent, potentially leading to future challenges regarding the validity of admissions and undermining the established rules. Another incorrect approach would be to prioritize applicants based on informal recommendations or perceived potential without strict adherence to the documented qualifications. This directly violates the principle of merit-based admission enshrined in the Institute's regulations. Relying on subjective factors over objective, documented evidence compromises the integrity of the selection process and can lead to accusations of unfairness or favoritism, damaging the Institute's reputation. A further incorrect approach would be to accept incomplete applications with the promise of submitting missing documents later, especially if this is not explicitly permitted by the Institute's admission policy. This circumvents the established procedural requirements and can lead to a chaotic and unmanageable admissions process. It also creates an unfair advantage for those who are allowed to submit late, potentially disadvantaging applicants who diligently met all deadlines. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a clear understanding of the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute's admission regulations. When faced with ambiguity or pressure, professionals must consult the official guidelines and, if necessary, seek clarification from the relevant administrative bodies within the Institute. The guiding principle should always be fairness, transparency, and strict adherence to the established rules, ensuring that every applicant is evaluated on the same objective criteria. Question 9. Regulatory review indicates that a research team at the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute has developed a promising new energy-saving technology. They are seeking external funding from private investors for further development and commercialization. During a preliminary presentation to potential investors, the team leader is tempted to emphasize the groundbreaking potential and early positive results, while downplaying the significant technical challenges and the fact that the results are still in the early experimental phase and require extensive validation. What is the most ethically and regulatorily sound approach for the research team to adopt in this situation, adhering strictly to the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute's internal guidelines on research conduct and external representation? Option A. Make specific, guaranteed promises about the technology's performance and commercial success based on the initial positive indicators, assuring investors of a rapid return on their investment. Option B. Provide a high-level overview of the project's goals and potential impact without delving into specific technical details or the current stage of development, allowing investors to infer the progress. Option C. Focus solely on the most impressive early results and the transformative potential of the technology, omitting any mention of the technical hurdles or the experimental stage to create a more compelling case for immediate investment. Option D. Fully disclose the project's potential and early positive findings, while also transparently outlining the current technical challenges, the preliminary nature of the results, and the steps required for validation, ensuring investors have a comprehensive understanding of both the opportunities and the risks. The correct answer is D. Fully disclose the project's potential and early positive findings, while also transparently outlining the current technical challenges, the preliminary nature of the results, and the steps required for validation, ensuring investors have a comprehensive understanding of both the opportunities and the risks. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the immediate need to secure funding for a critical research project and the ethical obligation to ensure all disclosures are accurate and complete, as mandated by the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute's internal regulations and general academic integrity principles. The pressure to achieve results and attract investment can tempt individuals to present information in a way that is overly optimistic or omits crucial caveats, potentially misleading stakeholders. Careful judgment is required to balance ambition with integrity. The correct approach involves transparently communicating the project's current status, including both its potential and its limitations, to the potential investors. This means clearly articulating the risks associated with the novel methodology, the preliminary nature of the results, and the need for further validation. This approach aligns with the Institute's regulatory framework, which implicitly requires honesty and accuracy in all external communications, particularly when seeking financial support. It upholds academic integrity by ensuring investors make decisions based on a realistic assessment of the project's viability, thereby fostering trust and long-term collaboration. An incorrect approach would be to selectively highlight only the positive findings and downplay, or omit any mention of the significant technical hurdles or the preliminary nature of the data. This constitutes a misrepresentation of facts, violating the Institute's ethical guidelines against deception, and potentially leading to legal repercussions if the investors are misled into making a financial commitment based on false pretenses. Another incorrect approach would be to provide a vague overview of the project without detailing the specific challenges or the stage of development. While not outright false, this lack of specificity can be interpreted as an attempt to obscure critical information, failing to meet the standard of full disclosure expected by potential investors, and contradicting the spirit of transparency encouraged by the Institute's regulations. A further incorrect approach would be to promise specific, guaranteed outcomes that are not yet substantiated by the research. This is a form of overpromising, which is ethically unsound and can damage the reputation of both the researcher and the Institute. The regulatory framework emphasizes realistic projections based on current evidence, not speculative guarantees. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a thorough self-assessment of the information being presented. Professionals should ask themselves, is this information complete and accurate? Could this information be misinterpreted or lead to false expectations? Am I adhering to the Institute's standards of honesty and transparency? If there is any doubt, seeking advice from a supervisor or the Institute's ethics committee is a prudent step. Prioritizing integrity over immediate gain is crucial for sustainable professional development and maintaining the credibility of the institution. Question 10. Consider a scenario where during the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute entrance exam, a proctor observes a candidate discreetly looking at notes concealed within their sleeve. The proctor suspects academic misconduct. According to the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute's examination regulations, what is the most appropriate immediate course of action for the proctor? Option A. Approach the candidate privately and ask them to show the contents of their sleeve, making a verbal warning. Option B. Publicly announce that cheating is not tolerated and warn all candidates to refrain from such behavior. Option C. Discreetly observe the candidate for further evidence of cheating and make a detailed note of the observation, including the time and specific actions, to be reported to the examination committee after the exam concludes. Option D. Immediately confiscate the candidate's examination paper and escort them out of the examination hall. The correct answer is D. Immediately confiscate the candidate's examination paper and escort them out of the examination hall. Explanation. The scenario presents a challenge related to academic integrity and the application of university regulations during the entrance examination process. The core difficulty lies in balancing the need to uphold the integrity of the examination with the responsibility to ensure fair treatment of all candidates. The Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute entrance exam regulations are paramount here, dictating the procedures for handling suspected academic misconduct. A professional approach requires a thorough understanding of these specific regulations, a commitment to due process, and the ability to make objective judgments based on evidence. The correct approach involves a systematic and documented process of investigation, adhering strictly to the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute's established procedures for academic misconduct. This means gathering all relevant evidence, providing the candidate with an opportunity to respond, and then making a decision based on the findings and the Institute's disciplinary guidelines. This approach ensures fairness, transparency, and compliance with the university's regulatory framework, thereby protecting the integrity of the examination and the reputation of the Institute. An incorrect approach would be to immediately disqualify the candidate without a proper investigation or without allowing them to present their side of the story. This violates principles of natural justice and the specific procedural safeguards likely outlined in the institute's regulations. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the suspected misconduct due to time pressure or a desire to avoid conflict. This undermines the examination's credibility and fails to uphold the institute's commitment to academic honesty. Finally, an approach that involves making a judgment based on personal bias or hearsay, rather than concrete evidence and established procedures, is also professionally unacceptable and ethically unsound. Professionals in this situation should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes adherence to established rules and procedures. This involves 1. Identifying the relevant regulations and policies. 2. Gathering objective evidence related to the suspected misconduct. 3. Following the prescribed investigation process, including providing the accused with an opportunity to be heard. 4. Making a decision based solely on the evidence and the regulations. 5. Documenting all steps taken and the rationale for the final decision. This structured approach ensures that decisions are fair, consistent, and defensible. Question 11. Operational review demonstrates that a submitted project for the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute entrance exam contains significant portions of text that appear to be directly copied from external sources without proper attribution. What is the most appropriate immediate course of action for the examination committee? Option A. Ignore the suspected plagiarism as it is a minor part of the overall submission and focus on other assessment criteria. Option B. Conduct a thorough investigation to verify the extent of the plagiarism. Consult the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute's academic integrity policy and follow the prescribed disciplinary procedures. Option C. Immediately disqualify the applicant and inform them of the decision due to academic dishonesty. Option D. Discuss the suspected plagiarism with other faculty members not directly involved in the examination process to gauge their opinion before taking any action. The correct answer is C. Immediately disqualify the applicant and inform them of the decision due to academic dishonesty. Explanation. The scenario presents a challenge related to academic integrity and the proper handling of potential plagiarism within the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute's examination process. The core difficulty lies in balancing the need to uphold academic standards and the institute's regulations against the potential impact on a student's future and the fairness of the assessment. A thorough review of the submitted work is paramount to ensure that any disciplinary action is based on concrete evidence and adheres strictly to the institute's established procedures. The correct approach involves a systematic and evidence-based process that prioritizes fairness and due process for the student. This means meticulously verifying the extent and nature of any suspected plagiarism, consulting the institute's specific academic integrity policy and examination regulations, and initiating the formal investigation procedure outlined therein. This approach ensures that decisions are not made on assumptions, but on documented findings, protecting both the integrity of the institute's assessments and the rights of the student. Adherence to the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute's regulations is the primary ethical and regulatory imperative. An incorrect approach would be to immediately assume guilt and impose a penalty without a thorough investigation. This violates the principle of due process and the institute's established procedures for handling academic misconduct. Another incorrect approach is to dismiss the concern without proper documentation or follow-up, which undermines the institute's commitment to academic integrity and could lead to a perception of lax standards. Furthermore, discussing the suspected plagiarism with unauthorized personnel or making a judgment based on hearsay rather than verifiable evidence constitutes a breach of confidentiality and professional conduct, as well as a failure to follow the institute's stipulated investigation protocols. Professionals in this situation should employ a decision-making framework that begins with identifying the relevant institutional policies and regulations. This is followed by gathering all available evidence, conducting a fair and impartial investigation, providing the student with an opportunity to respond to the allegations, and then making a decision based solely on the findings and in accordance with the established procedures. Transparency and adherence to the defined process are key to maintaining trust and upholding the credibility of the academic institution. Question 12. The investigation demonstrates that a student at the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute, facing the prospect of failing a crucial engineering economics course, has approached a faculty member with a proposal to facilitate a passing grade in exchange for a significant personal donation to a university-affiliated research project. Which of the following represents the most ethically and regulatorily sound course of action for the faculty member? Option A. Accept the donation and ensure the student receives a passing grade, arguing that the donation benefits the institute and the student's future contributions are valuable. Option B. Suggest the student redirect the donation to a different, unrelated university fund to avoid direct association with the grading process. Option C. Report the student's offer to the institute's ethics committee and the dean of the faculty, initiating a formal investigation into the student's conduct. Option D. Politely decline the student's offer, clearly stating that such arrangements are against institute policy and academic integrity, and advise the student to focus on legitimate academic remediation. The correct answer is D. Politely decline the student's offer, clearly stating that such arrangements are against institute policy and academic integrity, and advise the student to focus on legitimate academic remediation. Explanation. The investigation demonstrates a scenario where a student, facing academic pressure and potential failure in a critical engineering course at the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute, attempts to influence the grading process. This situation is professionally challenging because it involves ethical boundaries, academic integrity, and the potential for corruption within an educational institution. The core conflict lies between the student's desire to pass and the institute's responsibility to uphold fair and objective assessment standards. Careful judgment is required to navigate the ethical implications and potential consequences for all parties involved. The correct approach involves the student acknowledging their academic shortcomings and seeking legitimate avenues for improvement, such as requesting a review of the grading process based on established academic policies, seeking additional tutoring, or retaking the course. This approach upholds academic integrity, respects the authority of the faculty and the institute's regulations, and promotes a culture of honest effort and learning. It aligns with the principles of fairness and transparency expected within any academic or professional environment, ensuring that evaluations are based on merit and adherence to established criteria. An incorrect approach involving offering financial incentives to a faculty member to alter grades is a direct violation of the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute's ethical code and potentially national laws against bribery and corruption. This action undermines the credibility of the institute, compromises the fairness of the assessment system, and creates an environment of distrust. It demonstrates a lack of integrity and a willingness to engage in unethical practices to achieve personal gain, which is fundamentally incompatible with the values of engineering and economic professions. Another incorrect approach, such as attempting to bribe administrative staff to access or alter examination records, is also a severe ethical and legal transgression. This action not only breaches confidentiality and security protocols, but also constitutes an attempt to subvert the integrity of the entire examination system. It reflects a disregard for established procedures and a willingness to engage in fraudulent activities. A third incorrect approach, such as fabricating evidence of extenuating circumstances to justify a grade appeal without genuine grounds, is an act of deception. While appealing grades is a legitimate process, doing so with false pretenses erodes trust and undermines the fairness of the appeal mechanism. It demonstrates a lack of honesty and a willingness to manipulate the system for personal advantage. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a clear understanding and adherence to the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute's academic regulations, ethical guidelines, and any relevant national legislation. Professionals must prioritize integrity, honesty, and fairness. When faced with academic challenges, the first step should always be to explore legitimate channels for support and recourse, such as consulting with academic advisors, understanding the appeals process, and dedicating oneself to honest academic effort. Any deviation from these principles, particularly involving attempts to improperly influence outcomes, carries significant professional and ethical repercussions. Question 13. The analysis reveals that a prominent local official has inquired about the admission status of their relative, who has narrowly missed the cutoff score for the engineering program at the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute. The relative's application otherwise meets all formal documentation requirements. The official has expressed a strong desire for their relative to be admitted, implying that their support for the institute could be beneficial. What is the most appropriate course of action for the admissions committee? Option A. Consider the relative for admission based on the official's inquiry, as their support could bring future benefits to the institute, and adjust the admission score slightly to meet the threshold. Option B. Suggest that the relative apply for a different, less competitive program at the institute, even if their academic background is more suited for the engineering program. Option C. Evaluate the relative's application strictly according to the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute's published admission criteria and regulations, without any special consideration due to the inquiry. Option D. Inform the official that, while the relative did not meet the standard criteria, a special review can be initiated if the official provides a personal recommendation letter. The correct answer is C. Evaluate the relative's application strictly according to the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute's published admission criteria and regulations, without any special consideration due to the inquiry. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in academic institutions where the integrity of the admissions process is paramount. The challenge lies in balancing the need to uphold strict admission criteria with the potential for external influence or perceived favoritism. Adhering to the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute's official admission regulations is not merely a procedural requirement, but an ethical imperative to ensure fairness and meritocracy. The correct approach involves a rigorous and impartial evaluation of all applicants based solely on the established criteria outlined in the Institute's admission framework. This ensures that every candidate is assessed against the same objective standards, preventing any undue advantage or disadvantage. This approach is ethically sound and legally compliant with the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute's entrance examination guidelines, which mandate transparency and fairness in the selection process. An incorrect approach would be to deviate from the established criteria, even with the intention of accommodating a specific situation or individual. For instance, accepting an applicant who does not meet the minimum academic requirements, or bypassing the standard interview process for a particular candidate, undermines the fairness of the entire admission system. Such actions could be construed as a breach of the Institute's regulations regarding equal opportunity and merit-based selection. Furthermore, it erodes trust in the admissions process among other applicants and the wider academic community. Allowing personal connections or external pressures to influence decisions directly violates the principles of impartiality and integrity that are fundamental to any reputable educational institution's admission policy. Professionals in admissions roles must adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes adherence to established regulations and ethical principles. This involves 1. Thoroughly understanding the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute's admission regulations and guidelines. 2. Applying these regulations consistently and impartially to all applicants. 3. Documenting all decisions and the rationale behind them, ensuring transparency. 4. Seeking clarification from superiors or relevant committees when faced with ambiguous situations or potential conflicts of interest. 5. Resisting any form of undue influence or pressure that could compromise the integrity of the process. Question 14. System analysis indicates that during the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute entrance examination, an invigilator observes a candidate discreetly looking at notes concealed within their sleeve. The invigilator is aware of the Institute's strict policy prohibiting any external aids or unauthorized materials during the examination. What is the most appropriate and ethically sound course of action for the invigilator to take? Strictly adhering to the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute's examination framework. Option A. Immediately report the observed incident to the chief invigilator or examination supervisor for further investigation according to the Institute's established procedures. Option B. Provide the candidate with a subtle hint to look at the examination paper instead of their sleeve, assuming they are struggling with a question. Option C. Discreetly approach the candidate and verbally warn them to stop looking at their sleeve, without making a formal report. Option D. Ignore the behavior, assuming it was a momentary lapse or an insignificant action, to avoid disrupting the examination environment. Correct answer is A. Immediately report the observed incident to the chief invigilator or examination supervisor for further investigation according to the Institute's established procedures. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge rooted in the ethical obligation to maintain academic integrity and uphold the standards of the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute. The core difficulty lies in balancing the need to assist a struggling student with the imperative to prevent academic dishonesty, which undermines the fairness and credibility of the entrance examination process. Careful judgment is required to identify and address potential misconduct without unfairly penalizing a student who may be genuinely seeking help within acceptable boundaries. The correct approach involves a direct, transparent, and procedurally sound response that prioritizes adherence to the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute's examination regulations. This approach correctly identifies the need to report observed irregularities to the designated examination authorities. The justification lies in the Institute's explicit rules against any form of assistance during the examination, which are designed to ensure a level playing field for all candidates. Reporting the incident allows the Institute to investigate according to its established protocols, which may include interviewing the student and reviewing examination materials. This upholds the principle of fairness and prevents the compromise of the examination's validity. An incorrect approach that involves directly providing the student with answers or hints fails to uphold academic integrity. This action constitutes direct facilitation of cheating, a severe violation of examination rules and ethical conduct. It undermines the purpose of the entrance exam, which is to assess a candidate's independent knowledge and skills. Another incorrect approach, which is to ignore the observed behavior, is also professionally unacceptable. This inaction tacitly condones potential academic dishonesty and fails to protect the integrity of the examination process. It neglects the responsibility of all invigilators to ensure fair play and adherence to regulations. A further incorrect approach, such as subtly warning the student without reporting the incident, is insufficient. While it might prevent immediate further misconduct, it does not address the initial observed irregularity and leaves the possibility of undetected cheating unaddressed, thus failing to fully comply with the Institute's reporting requirements. The professional reasoning process in such situations should involve 1. Immediate observation and documentation of the suspected irregularity. 2. Consulting the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute's examination regulations to confirm the nature of the violation. 3. Reporting the observed incident promptly and accurately to the Chief Invigilator or designated examination committee, providing all relevant details. 4. Refraining from any direct intervention that could be construed as assisting or penalizing the student, allowing the official investigation process to take its course. Question 15. To address the challenge of admitting a highly experienced engineer who has demonstrated practical skills but has not completed the formal entrance examination for the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute, which of the following actions best aligns with the Institute's regulatory framework and ethical admission standards? Option A. Develop and administer a separate, simplified entrance examination specifically for the engineer to assess their practical knowledge. Option B. Grant the engineer provisional admission contingent upon them passing a specialized practical assessment after their first semester. Option C. Ensure the engineer completes the standard entrance examination as required for all applicants, regardless of prior experience. Option D. Waive the entrance examination for the engineer based on their extensive practical experience and a strong recommendation letter from a reputable industry leader. The correct answer is C. Ensure the engineer completes the standard entrance examination as required for all applicants, regardless of prior experience. Explanation. The scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the immediate need for specialized engineering expertise and the established procedures for academic admissions. The Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute entrance exam regulations are designed to ensure a fair and standardized evaluation of all candidates, regardless of their perceived potential or external recommendations. Deviating from these established procedures, even with good intentions, can undermine the integrity of the admission process and create an unfair advantage for one candidate over others. The correct approach involves strictly adhering to the official entrance examination procedures as outlined by the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute. This means that all candidates, including those with prior practical experience or recommendations, must undergo the same examination process. This approach is ethically sound and legally compliant with the Institute's regulations because it upholds the principle of equal opportunity and ensures that admission is based solely on demonstrated academic merit as assessed through the standardized examination. The regulations are designed to be impartial, and following them ensures fairness and transparency, preventing any perception of favoritism. An incorrect approach would be to bypass the standard entrance examination for the experienced engineer. This is ethically problematic as it violates the principle of fairness and equal treatment for all applicants. It also contravenes the Institute's regulations, which mandate a uniform examination process for all candidates seeking admission. Such a deviation could be interpreted as preferential treatment, potentially leading to challenges from other applicants and damaging the Institute's reputation for impartiality. Another incorrect approach would be to grant admission based solely on the recommendation letter without the candidate completing the entrance examination. This is a direct violation of the Institute's admission policy, which clearly specifies the entrance examination as a mandatory component for all applicants. Ethically, it undermines the value of the examination and the efforts of other candidates who have prepared for and taken the test. This action could also set a precedent for future admissions, creating an inconsistent and potentially biased system. A third incorrect approach would be to create a separate, less rigorous examination for the experienced engineer. This also violates the spirit and letter of the Institute's regulations. The regulations are designed to establish a consistent benchmark for all incoming students. Creating a separate examination implies that Institute standards are not uniform, which is a failure of regulatory compliance and ethical practice. It also fails to provide a comparable assessment of the candidate's knowledge and skills against the established curriculum and expectations for all students. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a clear understanding and strict adherence to the established regulatory framework. When faced with a situation that appears to offer a shortcut or a seemingly beneficial deviation, the professional must first consult the relevant regulations and guidelines. The primary consideration should always be the integrity of the process and fairness to all stakeholders. If a situation genuinely warrants an exception or a modification, this must be done through official channels and in strict accordance with any provisions for such exceptions within the existing regulations, rather than through ad hoc decisions. Question 16. The review process indicates that some of the questions developed for the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute entrance exam may not fully align with the intended learning outcomes and could potentially introduce ambiguity for candidates. What is the most appropriate course of action to uphold the integrity and fairness of the examination? Option A. Make minor, ad hoc adjustments to the wording of the questionable questions based on the immediate impressions of the examination committee without formal documentation or expert consultation. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive review of all examination questions by a panel of subject matter experts to identify and rectify any ambiguities or misalignments with learning outcomes, ensuring adherence to the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute's examination regulations. Option C. Immediately discard the potentially problematic questions and replace them with new questions sourced from publicly available academic resources to expedite the process. Option D. Proceed with the examination as planned, assuming candidates will be able to interpret the questions and address any concerns raised post-examination through appeals. The correct answer is B. Conduct a comprehensive review of all examination questions by a panel of subject matter experts to identify and rectify any ambiguities or misalignments with learning outcomes, ensuring adherence to the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute's examination regulations. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the Institute's academic integrity standards and the pressure to achieve favorable outcomes in a high-stakes entrance examination. The need for a fair and transparent evaluation process is paramount, and any deviation can undermine the credibility of the Institute and the qualifications it confers. Careful judgment is required to navigate the ethical considerations and ensure adherence to the established examination regulations. The correct approach involves a thorough and impartial review of the examination materials and procedures, focusing on identifying any potential irregularities or biases that could compromise the fairness of the assessment. This aligns with the core principles of academic integrity and the regulatory framework governing entrance examinations, which mandate objective evaluation and equal opportunity for all candidates. Specifically, adherence to the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute's examination regulations, which likely stipulate procedures for question development, review, and administration to ensure fairness and prevent any form of academic dishonesty or unfair advantage, is critical. An incorrect approach that involves prematurely accepting the validity of the examination questions without a proper review process would be a significant ethical and regulatory failure. This bypasses the established quality control mechanisms designed to uphold the integrity of the examination. Another incorrect approach, such as making arbitrary changes to the questions based on subjective opinions or external pressures, would also violate the regulations. Such actions could introduce bias, unfairly disadvantage candidates, and undermine the standardized nature of the entrance exam. Furthermore, failing to document the review process and the rationale for any decisions made would be a breach of procedural requirements, hindering accountability and transparency. Professionals in this situation should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes adherence to the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute's examination regulations. This involves 1. Understanding the specific regulations governing the examination process, including those related to question development, review, and approval. 2. Conducting a systematic and objective review of the examination materials, looking for evidence of bias, factual inaccuracies, or ambiguity that could lead to unfair assessment. 3. Consulting with relevant stakeholders, such as subject matter experts and examination committee members, to gather diverse perspectives and ensure a comprehensive evaluation. 4. Documenting all findings, decisions, and justifications thoroughly to maintain transparency and accountability. 5. Implementing any necessary corrective actions in a manner consistent with the established regulations and ethical principles. Question 17. What factors determine the most effective and ethically sound approach to fostering economic development within the Andijon region, considering Uzbekistan's national economic strategy and regulatory framework? Option A. Prioritizing investment in human capital development and technological innovation aligned with national economic diversification goals. Option B. Maximizing immediate foreign direct investment inflows through deregulation, irrespective of long-term local economic integration. Option C. Pursuing economic growth strategies that bypass or disregard existing national environmental and labor laws. Option D. Focusing exclusively on large-scale infrastructure projects without comprehensive economic impact assessments or social benefit analysis. The correct answer is A. Prioritizing investment in human capital development and technological innovation aligned with national economic diversification goals. Explanation. The scenario presents a challenge for prospective students of the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute by requiring them to understand the foundational principles of economic development within the context of Uzbekistan's regulatory and strategic framework. The challenge lies in identifying the most impactful and ethically sound approaches to fostering sustainable economic growth, considering the specific socio-economic realities and legal mandates of the region. A deep understanding of national development priorities, adherence to economic legislation, and ethical considerations in resource allocation are paramount. The correct approach emphasizes the integration of national economic strategy with local implementation, focusing on human capital development and innovation. This aligns with Uzbekistan's stated goals of modernizing its economy, improving living standards, and fostering a knowledge-based society. Regulatory frameworks in Uzbekistan, such as those outlined in the Strategy for the Development of Uzbekistan, prioritize sustainable development, technological advancement, and social welfare. Therefore, an approach that champions these elements while respecting legal and ethical boundaries is the most professionally sound. An approach that prioritizes short-term foreign investment without a clear strategy for local integration and benefit sharing is ethically questionable and potentially detrimental to long-term sustainable development. It may lead to resource exploitation without commensurate local economic upliftment, and could contravene national policies aimed at fostering domestic industries and skilled labor. Focusing solely on infrastructure development without considering its economic viability or social impact is an inefficient allocation of resources. While infrastructure is crucial, its development must be guided by economic feasibility studies and contribute to broader development objectives, as mandated by economic planning regulations. An approach that neglects the legal and regulatory framework in pursuit of rapid economic gains is fundamentally flawed. Uzbekistan, like any nation, has established laws governing economic activity, environmental protection, and labor. Disregarding these not only leads to legal repercussions, but also undermines the principles of good governance and ethical conduct essential for sustainable economic progress. Professionals in this field must employ a decision-making process that begins with a thorough understanding of the national legal and strategic economic framework. This involves identifying key national development priorities, assessing potential economic activities against these priorities, and evaluating their ethical implications and long-term sustainability. A balanced approach that considers economic efficiency, social equity, environmental responsibility, and legal compliance is essential for effective and ethical economic development. Question 18. The monitoring system demonstrates an unexpected fluctuation in energy consumption for a critical production line, exceeding the typical operational variance by 15% for the past 48 hours. This deviation is not currently impacting output quality, but raises concerns about potential underlying inefficiencies or equipment malfunction. Option A. Immediately adjust the production schedule to reduce the load on the affected line, assuming the fluctuation is a temporary anomaly that will resolve itself without further investigation. Option B. Initiate a detailed diagnostic analysis of the production line's energy usage, cross-referencing sensor data with historical performance logs, and consulting the equipment's operational manual to identify the root cause of the increased consumption and determine the most cost-effective and technically sound corrective action. Option C. Request an immediate replacement of the energy monitoring system, suspecting a calibration error in the sensors without verifying the actual performance of the production line. Option D. Implement a temporary workaround by slightly increasing the output target for other production lines to compensate for any potential future reduction in efficiency from the affected line, without investigating the energy fluctuation. The correct answer is B. Initiate a detailed diagnostic analysis of the production line's energy usage, cross-referencing sensor data with historical performance logs, and consulting the equipment's operational manual to identify the root cause of the increased consumption and determine the most cost-effective and technically sound corrective action. Explanation. The monitoring system demonstrates a potential deviation from established operational protocols, presenting a scenario that requires careful judgment due to the interconnectedness of engineering processes and economic efficiency. Professionals must balance the immediate need for operational continuity with the long-term implications of process integrity and resource allocation. The challenge lies in identifying the root cause of the deviation and implementing a solution that is both technically sound and economically viable, all while adhering to the specific regulatory framework governing the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute's operations. This framework likely emphasizes safety, efficiency, and responsible resource management. The correct approach involves a systematic investigation to understand the nature and extent of the deviation. This includes gathering data, consulting relevant technical documentation and operational guidelines, and potentially engaging with subject matter experts. The goal is to identify the most efficient and effective method to rectify the issue without compromising the overall integrity of the system or incurring unnecessary costs. This aligns with the principles of process optimization, which seeks to improve performance by identifying and eliminating inefficiencies. Adherence to the Institute's internal regulations and any applicable national engineering standards is paramount. An incorrect approach would be to implement a quick fix without a thorough understanding of the underlying problem. This could lead to recurring issues, increased costs, or even safety hazards, violating the principles of responsible engineering practice and potentially contravening regulatory requirements for system maintenance and operational stability. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the deviation, assuming it is minor or will resolve itself. This demonstrates a lack of diligence and foresight, failing to uphold professional responsibility and potentially leading to more significant problems down the line, which would be a failure to comply with proactive operational management guidelines. Professionals should approach such situations by first clearly defining the problem and its potential impact. This should be followed by a structured analysis of possible solutions, evaluating each against established criteria such as effectiveness, efficiency, cost, safety, and regulatory compliance. Decision-making should be data-driven and documented, ensuring accountability and providing a basis for future reference. Question 19. The assessment process reveals that a significant number of applications for the upcoming academic year at the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute have been processed with varying degrees of adherence to established admission protocols. One batch of applications was reviewed based on a strict adherence to the published academic score thresholds and interview performance metrics. Another batch, however, was influenced by informal recommendations from influential local figures, and a third batch was subtly deprioritized due to the applicant's geographical origin, which was perceived by some administrators as less likely to contribute to immediate regional economic growth. A fourth batch was processed with unusual speed due to a perceived urgency by the admissions committee, without a clear policy basis for this urgency, which approach best reflects the principles of fair and transparent admissions for the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute. Option A. Prioritizing applications based on objective academic performance and interview results as outlined in the Institute's admission policy. Option B. Deprioritizing applications from certain geographical regions based on perceived future economic contributions. Option C. Expediting the processing of applications based on a subjective sense of urgency by the admissions committee. Option D. Giving weight to informal recommendations from influential local figures to foster community relationships. Correct answer is A. Prioritizing applications based on objective academic performance and interview results as outlined in the Institute's admission policy. Explanation. The assessment process reveals a common challenge in educational institutions, balancing the need for efficient resource allocation with the imperative to ensure fairness and transparency in admissions. For the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute, this scenario is professionally challenging because any perceived bias or lack of clear methodology in processing applications can lead to significant reputational damage, potential legal challenges, and a decline in the quality of incoming students. The institute must adhere to its own internal regulations and any overarching national guidelines for higher education admissions, which typically emphasize meritocracy, equal opportunity, and data integrity. The correct approach involves a systematic and data-driven review of all applications, focusing on objective criteria defined by the institute's admission policy. This ensures that decisions are based on the applicant's qualifications and potential, rather than subjective interpretations or external pressures. This method aligns with the principles of fairness and transparency expected in academic admissions, preventing arbitrary decisions and upholding the integrity of the selection process. It also allows for clear justification of decisions, should they be scrutinized. An incorrect approach that relies on informal recommendations or personal connections bypasses the established objective criteria. This violates the principle of equal opportunity, as it grants preferential treatment to certain applicants without a basis in merit. Such a practice can be seen as a form of corruption or undue influence, undermining the credibility of the institute and potentially admitting less qualified candidates. Another incorrect approach that involves prioritizing applicants based on their perceived future economic contribution to the region, without explicit policy backing or objective measurement, is also problematic. While economic development is a laudable goal, using it as a primary, subjective admissions criterion can lead to discrimination and is not a standard or ethically justifiable basis for academic selection. Admissions should primarily focus on academic and technical suitability for the chosen program of study. A further incorrect approach that involves delaying the processing of applications from certain regions or demographic groups without a justifiable administrative reason introduces an element of unfairness and potential discrimination. All applications should be processed in a timely and consistent manner, regardless of the applicant's origin, unless specific policies are in place to address regional disparities in a transparent and equitable way. Professionals in educational admissions should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes adherence to established policies and regulations. This involves 1. Clearly understanding the institute's admission criteria and procedures. 2. Applying these criteria consistently and objectively to all applicants. 3. Documenting the decision-making process for each application. 4. Seeking clarification or guidance from superiors or relevant committees when faced with ambiguous situations or potential conflicts of interest. 5. Maintaining confidentiality and integrity throughout the process. Question 20. Quality control measures reveal inconsistencies in the processing times and accuracy of student applications for the upcoming academic year at the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute. To address this, the admissions department is considering several strategies to optimize the application review and selection process. Which of the following strategies is most likely to lead to sustainable and compliant improvements? Option A. Implementing a comprehensive review of the entire application lifecycle, from initial submission to final enrollment, using data analytics to identify specific bottlenecks and areas for improvement, followed by targeted interventions and continuous monitoring. Option B. Expediting the review of all applications by reducing the number of required supporting documents and shortening the evaluation period for each applicant. Option C. Relying on the experience of long-serving admissions officers to identify and eliminate perceived redundant steps in the application form and review stages. Option D. Focusing solely on automating the initial data entry phase of applications to speed up the overall process, without analyzing the subsequent review and decision-making stages. The correct answer is A. Implementing a comprehensive review of the entire application lifecycle, from initial submission to final enrollment, using data analytics to identify specific bottlenecks and areas for improvement, followed by targeted interventions and continuous monitoring. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in engineering and economic institutes, ensuring the integrity and efficiency of internal processes, specifically in the context of student admissions and resource allocation, which directly impacts the institute's reputation and operational effectiveness. The challenge lies in balancing the need for rigorous quality control with the practical constraints of time and resources, while adhering to the established regulatory framework of the Andijon Engineering and Economical Institute. Careful judgment is required to identify and implement the most effective and compliant process optimization strategy. The correct approach involves a systematic, data-driven analysis of the entire admissions workflow, from application submission to final enrollment. This approach prioritizes identifying bottlenecks and inefficiencies through objective metrics, such as processing times, error rates, and resource utilization. The justification for this approach is rooted in the principles of good governance and operational excellence, which are implicitly expected of any educational institution operating under a defined regulatory framework. By focusing on measurable improvements and stakeholder feedback, this method ensures that optimizations are not only effective, but also aligned with the Institute's mission and regulatory compliance, promoting fairness and transparency in admissions. An incorrect approach that relies solely on anecdotal evidence or the opinions of a few senior staff members fails to provide a comprehensive understanding of the process. This can lead to superficial fixes that do not address the root causes of inefficiency and may even introduce new problems. Ethically, this approach is flawed because it lacks objectivity and can perpetuate biases, potentially disadvantaging certain applicant groups. Another incorrect approach that focuses exclusively on reducing the number of application stages without a thorough analysis of their purpose and impact is also problematic. While simplification can be beneficial, eliminating crucial steps without understanding their contribution to quality assurance or regulatory compliance can compromise the integrity of the admissions process. This could lead to errors, misinformation, or a failure to meet specific admission criteria mandated by the Institute's governing body. A further incorrect approach that prioritizes speed over accuracy, such as rushing the review of applications to meet arbitrary deadlines, is ethically and regulatorily unsound. This can result in incorrect assessments, unfair decisions, and a decline in the quality of admitted students, ultimately harming the Institute's academic standing and reputation. It violates the principle of due diligence and fair evaluation. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. 1. Define the problem clearly and identify the specific process to be optimized. 2. Gather objective data and metrics related to the current process performance. 3. Involve relevant stakeholders to gain diverse perspectives and identify potential issues. 4. Analyze the data to pinpoint root causes of inefficiencies and bottlenecks. 5. Develop potential solutions, considering their impact on quality, efficiency, cost, and regulatory compliance. 6. Evaluate and select the most appropriate solution based on data, feasibility, and alignment with institutional goals and regulations. 7. Implement the chosen solution and establish mechanisms for ongoing monitoring and evaluation. 8. Continuously refine the process based on feedback and performance data.